my internet to keep stable. Fantastic. Okay, let me put up new line. Internet, come back. Okay, let me pin the message again. I'll be diving into the realm of psychedelics and trauma we can experience due to using it. Using it in the. Let's make it like this, in the wrong manner. Stay tuned if you're interested. Send and then pin comment. Okay, let's see if I can use my flare now. Hi guys, I'm talking about psychedelic trauma. If you're interested in the realm of psychedelics and the trauma that we can encounter while using psychedelics, stay tuned. I'll be exploring with you guys the realm of psychedelics and how it affects our consciousness, how it affects our reality, our health, our mind. And if you are somebody that has used psychedelics in the past, let me know in the comments. I would love to know if you have used psychedelics before, and if you only had a great experience, or if you maybe had a tough experience in the past as well. I am here to support, I'm here to answer questions and to get this conversation going. I will talk a little bit about my experiences I had on psychedelics and what it did to my life. I started my journey as a person that was still very into religion, and that was my everything. And the first time I used psychedelics in my life, it completely changed the way I viewed and saw everything. If that is something that has happened to you in your life before, let me know. Thank you for joining. Stay tuned as we dive and delve into the realm of psychedelics and the trauma that we can encounter. If you have used psychedelics before, let me know. I would love to know if you have used any psychedelic before and how it has affected your life. So one of the big things that happened to me, yes, I am back. See, it looks like the algorithm is catching me again. So as we dive into psychedelic trauma, stay tuned and I'll explore with you the realms of psychedelics, how it affects our consciousness, how it affects our health, how it affects our outer reality. And yeah, absolutely, psychedelics has that ability to completely change our lives, or it is the catalyst to help us change our own lives. At first, when I used psychedelics for the very first time in my life, I had this perception that I'm gonna have a psychedelic experience where I'm going to kill my ego and then I'm gonna be this super spiritual person. But little did I know that when we use these mind-altering substances, it can never kill that part of ourselves, because the ego is our person, that's our body. Yeah, absolutely. I also love my ego, because without it, we have nothing to interface with this reality, right? Something I had to learn the hard way as well, coming from a religious background and never even smoking weed before, never actually drinking alcohol, never smoking cigarettes. So I had no idea what it was like to be high. I had no point of reference, and then for the very first experience I used 8 grams of magic mushrooms which was freaking hectic. Experienced my own death. I became the source of all things, saw different planets in different realities. I remember reciting this one paragraph or paraphrase over and over in my mind, that I was Jesus, I was Buddha, I was every man ever lived, every song ever sung, every book ever written. I experienced every life, I went everywhere, and at the end of the day it all came back to this one place and moment in time where I would finally understand. That was where it stopped. Until today, I still don't know what that one key was, what I'll understand, but it keeps me on my toes, it keeps me searching for more, it keeps me in this place of knowing that when I do reach that space, I'll remember. I remember in this experience, I had this beautiful vision where I sat around a campfire with tribe members, people that I journeyed with, and we were sitting on wooden stumps and laughing about life, how we created life, and every time we send ourselves into a life, I remember telling them that you pulled this big joke on me. Everything, my whole life was just this big joke, and I couldn't stop laughing because to me that moment in time it felt like these beings sent me down to earth to live this life and experience all kinds of trauma and catalysts in my life and hardship and all kinds of weird things, but it was just a cosmic, yes, absolutely a cosmic joke. It was the funniest thing ever. And when I woke up there, being still in a very high vibration, and the person that shamaned me came to me, I remember how he spoke to me. The most helpful moment during my journey with the medicine. Well, I guess there was quite a lot of those moments actually, you know, going to those states of expansion and truly getting to know myself, knowing that I am all of it, knowing that there is no external source of power that's going to save me, that it is all up to me. And everywhere I go, whether it's on a psychedelic experience, a meditation, or whatever I do in life, the only thing I can find is myself and more of myself. You know, all the seemingly good, all the seemingly bad, every aspect of who I am, I can only find more of that, more of me. Knowing that I am my own savior, I am my own source energy, and that all medicine is just a catalyst, a beautiful, beautiful, amazing catalyst that we can use to see and experience more of ourselves. So on this journey of expansion, I thought at first that psychedelics is going to be something that is going to heal me. I had this perception still of needing fixing because I grew up with this life where everybody teaches you things are broken and they need to be fixed. Growing up with not a lot, you learn that fixing and brokenness is the way to go, but then eventually you get to a space where you realize that I actually am not broken at all. I am completely whole. You know, when you go to the ends of creation, when you go all the way back to source, and you realize that, oh my gosh, I am all of it, then you realize, but there's absolutely nothing that's wrong with me. There's absolutely nothing I can change to be more of myself. I just am, because I am all of it. I remember this one experience that I had. I was sitting in a plantation with friends of mine, deep into a journey, smoked some weed, and in that moment I went into my source space. And when I was in the source space, I was thinking to myself, if I could change anything, what would I change? I have the power at this very moment to choose anything, to be able to experience anything that I want to experience. And the only thing that came to my mind was that everything is perfect. Every single thing that happens in my life is exactly the way it should be. It's exactly the way it's supposed to be. I wouldn't want to change anything. And then I asked myself again, but if I really would like to change something, what would I change? What would I want to have different in my life? And I thought for a second, and I realized, you know what, I would like to have more fun, because this is supposed to be a game, this is supposed to be fun. The universe was trying to show me, or I was trying to show myself through all these experiences I had, that life is supposed to be fun, it's supposed to be enjoyed. We're supposed to be like children playing. When we go into that inner child playfulness, we realize that that's the only state of being that there can be. If we are doing anything outside of that state of joy and playfulness, then we're out of alignment, you know. It's the most beautiful thing there can be. I remember one of my experiences, I went into the space of being like a little child again. I was running around telling my wife that I found the key to the universe. The key is just to laugh. Laugh. And I would tell her, I would take her by the shoulders and say, laugh. And I would just screech from laughter, run around, jump over rocks, and everything was just so funny. And it was the most beautiful thing I ever experienced, but I didn't realize at that time that that was that exact key of what life is supposed to be. Enjoyment. It's supposed to be fun. We're supposed to stay children, grow up, yes, have an expanded consciousness, know more about how to be human and how to human and connect and whatever we want to do to have a full-fledged life. But at the end of the day, if we go out of that space of playfulness, then we should really look at ourselves and say, what did I do to get out of this space? How did I end up being so serious? You know, when we play and enjoy our lives, it's as if time stands still. I don't know if you've ever experienced that before, but when you're just in the space of playfulness, it's truly as if time completely stops, as if it doesn't exist anymore, as if the rules of reality doesn't apply anymore. It's such a beautiful thing to know that we have this ability to expand our consciousness, to expand our awareness into a space of true enjoyment, pure enjoyment. But sometimes, yes, you're absolutely right, there is no time, especially there, you know. I remember one of my experiences where me and my friend was in a very high vibrational space, and it felt like time was just 10 minutes. We experienced this 10 minutes and it would just cycle back and back again. Good question. What questions should people ask me that they don't ask? I guess there's a lot of questions that people can ask, you know. A big thing would be definitely of how to navigate that psychedelic trauma when you do experience the trauma. And I guess another big thing to me would be of how to navigate those spaces, you know. If you don't know how to navigate that spaces when you're in a psychedelic experience, it can be absolutely excruciating to meet beings, to go into different dimensions. I have no idea what to expect. This is one of the big things why, to me, it's so important to have a proper shaman when we go on these experiences, to know that there's somebody that's been there before, there's somebody that has experienced this before. There's a reason why a shaman is called a shaman, because they've been there, they've seen it all. And on this journey of expansion, learning how to truly hold that space, truly knowing what every single person experiences when they go into these spaces, is such a profound thing to be able to embody and to go through. And for me, it's really such an amazing path to be on, to know that I was able to navigate through the trauma. I was able to experience the trauma in the first place, to know what it's like to go through psychedelic trauma, to experience anxiety, to experience PTSD, and then to navigate through it, to learn how to walk myself back home, to walk myself back into that space of remembrance, to know that I am the biggest shaman of them all to myself, and everybody can be their own cosmic shaman. So becoming your own cosmic shaman is the key here. It's that ultimate end goal. I remember the day when, on one of my experiences, my big question or my intention was to find that ultimate healing that I was looking for. And on that experience, I so clearly remember that part of me telling me that medicine can't heal you. That's not actually its purpose. Its purpose is to be a catalyst to show you more of yourself. And while I was in that experience, it made perfect sense, but afterwards I'm like, oh my gosh, if the medicine can't take me there, then how the fuck am I gonna get there? It actually told me, it gave me that gift. I was not in a space to be able to take it, to realize what it was. Sometimes it takes us quite a while to realize that we already have everything inside of us. All the answers is right there. We just need to sit and listen. One of the biggest lessons I feel the journey of expansion through the psychedelics was to come to a space of stillness, to be able to sit in that 0 point and just listen to myself. Being able to be in that place where you can just sit and truly listen to yourself is so profound. And sometimes it's not the biggest journey, the most intense journey that's gonna get you there. Sometimes it's that small whisper. It reminds me of the Bible, where I can't remember who the guy was. I think it was what was it? I can only think of the Afrikaans name, where he was talking about how he was searching for God, and he searched for God in the winds, and he couldn't find him in the storm, he couldn't find him in the oceans, he couldn't find him in all this extreme events. But when he sat with himself in the quietness, God whispered to him. And that is how I experienced my psychedelic journey as well, with the big things. The psychedelics showed me the extent of who I am, the maximum light and the maximum darkness, the most extremes of who I am and what I am. But when I sat with myself, smoking a little weed in a meditation, in my house, in my safe space, all the answers came to me. All that integration, one by one, started coming to me, and I started realizing what it is to truly be with yourself. And I realized how many people are in the space where they cannot sit with themselves. As soon as we sit with ourselves and really need to listen to our own hearts, we always want some kind of distraction, whether it is to watch stories, or in this case use another psychedelic to experience something big, or be with friends. But as soon as we have to truly sit with ourselves, it becomes difficult. We can't sit more than 5 minutes. Some people can't sit more than 2 minutes. Then they get frustrated and they have to jump up and become busy again. The mind never quiets down. It's actually funny now that I'm talking about quieting the mind. The other day on Facebook, I saw a post where they have now found that when you do sit in meditation, we are actually able to switch off most of our brain. The scans shows that when you sit in meditation and you go into that 0 point, you quiet your mind, you actually switch off a lot of your brain, and your brain has that ability to rest, which is actually such an amazing thing, being in that complete state of rest. Fantastic. I see my internet connection is jumping up and down today, so if I disappear or freeze, just hold on, I'll be back. So it's such a beautiful journey of expansion to go through all of these things, and especially when it comes to psychedelic trauma, we sometimes experience things that we don't know how to make sense of, and especially if you don't have somebody to guide you. If you don't have somebody to take you by the hand and say, hey buddy, I've been here before, I have gone where you have gone, I've died before and came back. I remember how I felt the first couple of times when I experienced my own death. Thank you. Can you also hear the background music, or is it only me that's hearing the background music? Thank you. So when I experienced my own death for the very first time, it was a very real thing. I remember so clearly when this loop that I went through happened to me, of driving off this cliff, rolling to the bottom, being stuck. I could smell the blood, that my entire body was, what's the word? Paralyzed. I was completely paralyzed. I couldn't move. I remember the sirens. Then I remember being in the hospital, being pushed into the ICU, and then I remember the light on my face. Oh, okay. Maybe the music is just in my ears, then that's fine. Yeah, I have music that's playing on my YouTube, but it's a nice calming music here in my background, putting me in the vibe, so it's nice to have something here in the background. Nice and vibey. It feels like I'm sitting in a disco or a club or something while I'm talking, so it's quite fun. In any case, when I was in this death loop, I finally had this light shining in my face, and then it was just total darkness. Okay, no, that's good to know, thanks. And that was quite scary the first time I experienced that death loop, when everything just turned dark, and then there was just nothing. Coming from a religious background and just starting to lose my religion, when I went into that complete darkness, I thought, oh my gosh, there's nothing more. When I die, it's the end. I completely messed up, and then I would wake up again where I started my experience, and I would be back in the loop, and I'd go back into that darkness. And by the fourth or fifth time when I experienced the darkness, I said, okay, now I surrender. Apparently what I believed is completely wrong, and if darkness is the only thing I'm gonna experience after I die, then I accept it. It's the only thing I can do, because obviously everything leads back to this one moment in time where everything just gets dark, and then I went into a whole different experience of experiencing immense beauty and joy going through the darkness. But that memory of being in the bakkie down the hill where I knew I was dying, that stuck with me for a couple of years, and being able to navigate through that was a lot of work. I was stuck in this thought pattern of, did I really come out of that experience, or am I still down there? Am I still lying in that bakkie, being in that last moments between life and death, that remnants of a dying man experiencing a lifetime of memory or experiences just before everything goes dark and it's finished? So that was quite an intense experience, to go through that experience, not knowing if my reality is even real anymore. And because of that, I started doing all kinds of extreme things. Yeah, absolutely. It's definitely something I've been pondering about. To me, it feels like, when it comes to the nature of reality about life and death, it's about, this reality is the most solid we can be, the lowest vibration that we can possibly embody, that is the closest to death we can get. And the higher our vibration goes, the more alive we get. I always compare this with the experiences I have. When I raise my vibration, I feel more connected, I feel more alive. I can suddenly, my telepathy works, and all my other spiritual gifts are super heightened. And when I'm back in this more solid 3D state, being awake, it feels so disconnected. I remember I had a journey where I was hosting an experience for a person. I was just taking a microdose, but my microdose almost hit me harder than the client. And while I was on this experience, I was lying on my back, looking up into the sky, and suddenly this intense feeling came over me that this, where we are now, is death, and life is when we go beyond this experience, when we transcend this physical form. And for a moment I couldn't distinguish between whether I'm alive or dead, and for a moment I almost freaked. I'm like, holy fuck, I am actually dead. This is not freaking life. They lied to me. If everything is upside down, inside out, and the wrong way around, then this must be death. This is not life. Life is connection. Life is beauty. Life is all these pretty colors you experience. Life is being able to know and understand and see. But here we are, so disconnected from ourselves and everything around us that it doesn't feel like life. So for me, that is quite a very real thing still, to see this as more like death than life, even though we are life itself. I love how Bashar will also explain how we are life itself, and that every experience is absolute truth. There is no one truth. Everybody experiences their truth in their way. And I know so many people out there wouldn't understand when we talk about psychedelic trauma, because to them psychedelics is just a beautiful experience. It took me over 6 years to get to that space in my life where psychedelics could actually be just a beautiful experience, even though I still experience the shadow and the light. So navigating through the space of trauma into a space of freedom is all about starting to know that the medicine is not a healer. The medicine is not the answer. It's just a permission slip for us to experience who we truly are. And as our belief systems, our systems of consciousness starts to come back home, and we start to hear them, we start to listen to them, when we start to notice that they're just trying to get our attention, then the medicine doesn't have to be these extreme experiences, then it all becomes a very neutral experience. I remember in the beginning when I had experiences, it was always this super extreme experiences of experiencing ultimate light and ultimate darkness, coming back and saying, holy shit, never again. I don't want to do this again. And then other people will just have this mediocre experiences, and I never understood why. But then somewhere along the journey I realized, you know what, the reason why I'm experiencing all these extremes is because I believe that is how life is. It's a life of super extremes. And when I changed my mind, when I altered my settings, we have this inside joke with one of our friends that we went to a festival with, where we went for a hike to the river. We all took some acid, just a nice microdose. And we were just in this beautiful space, and we were talking about similar things, and he said something about the perspectives, and I told him, you know what, you just have to change your settings. And that night when we went back to the stage, somebody was playing, I don't know what DJ was playing, but the music wasn't the best. And he looked at the music, it's like, just change the settings, and he held his hand out to the music and pretended to change the settings, and suddenly the music changed and completely different music started playing that was actually enjoyable. And since that day we always had this thing about just change the settings. If you don't like it, just change the settings, for I am the master of my reality, so let me just change the settings. As simple as that. Definitely easier when we are on a higher vibration, when we are mastering our own energy, to be able to change that settings. But at the end of the day, it's all about changing our mind. And the psychedelics, they don't change our mind, they just show us the possibilities. I had this ultimate trust that psychedelics is going to solve all my problems. And if you are one of those people that thinks psychedelics is going to solve all your problems, it definitely will not solve all your problems. Psychedelics has that ability to show you that you have a lot more problems than you think you do have. It will highlight every part of your being until you get to the space of realizing, oh my gosh, I actually have a lot more to work on than I thought I have, you know. When you come from religion as I have, you suppressed everything that is shadow, everything that is dark or seemingly evil, and then suddenly you become aware of all these aspects of yourself that you never knew you even had. And at first it can be quite scary to realize, but oh my gosh, I have all these parts of myself that feels evil, you know, if you reference it in the sense of religion. You start to realize, but oh my gosh, am I the devil? I'm like, oh yes, absolutely. I am all that is seemingly good, I am all that is seemingly bad, and everything in between. I am, full stop. But it all comes through that integration, when you go sit in that quiet spaces, when you close the door, when you're all alone, whether you burn your incense, sit with your crystals, with your tarot cards, as I love to do as well, using that small permission slips. When you go to that quiet space and you sit with yourself and you ask yourself, what did I truly experience? What truly happened to me? Why did I experience this timeline shift? Or why did I see the portals? Why did I see a dragon jumping out of the fire? Talking about dragons jumping out of a fire, with one of my experiences, that was something that basically happened. We were sitting around the campfire. It was late at night somewhere during the evening at the end of our journey, and we were just smoking weed, drinking wine, having our supper, you know, a real picnic in the forest, and we were just staring at the fire. And one of my friends were like, oh my gosh, do you see this? There's a dragon in the fire. And then my other friends like, yes, I see it. They're like, come guys, come look, there's a freaking dragon in the fire. And we all came closer and saw this beautiful little dragon. If I think about how big it was about, let's say, the size of 2 rulers. It looked a lot like an iguana, but with wings. And it was looking straight at me. And in that moment I was like, holy shit, this is real. There's an actual dragon in the fire. And it's breathing, and it started almost smiling. You could see its teeth. I was like, oh my gosh. There's a dragon in the fire. And I was staring at it, and it stared right back at me. And for a moment I thought to myself, oh shit, that's a fucking dragon. And it reacted towards my energy. And in that moment when my energy went a little negatively polarized, a little into that fear mindset, for that moment I thought, this thing is gonna jump at me and bite me. I'm like, oh my gosh, why am I afraid of this dragon? It's a freaking dragon. They're benevolent beings, they're neutral. Take a deep breath, calm down, go back into that neutral space. And as my energy changed, as my emotion changed, the dragon changed according to my energy. And since that I realized that our reality is super reactive towards our internal energy. That's why they call it energy in motion, emotions. So that was quite an amazing experience. And after that, when I saw dragons again, I knew how to stay in that neutral space, to know that the dragon won't react in a way that I wouldn't want it to react. So that completely changed my life, to be able to see real dragons coming out. Yeah, that was pretty amazing. It was actually the very first experience I had on acid with friends. It was this beautiful, magical experience, and since then I saw dragons another 2 times. The second time when I saw a dragon was with one of my best friends. Then we were trip buddies. He was the only person that I could go on this experience with, and knew that he would understand what I go through and I would understand what he goes through. And he had this wooden staff. It wasn't the prettiest staff. He had some geometry on it, he had some feathers, and he had LED lights on it, so it actually looked cool. And where we were camping, he wedged it in between two rocks that we placed on the ground so that it can stand and to watch our side. So we were on the one side of the fire and the staff was on the other side. And somewhere during the day when we went back to the camp to start making fire and preparing our food, after having the craziest freaking experience, by the time the sun set, the staff started vibrating. It literally looked like in the movies when something starts glitching in and out of reality. So the staff you would see how it phases in and out of reality. And by the time it was pitch black dark, we saw this huge being standing behind the staff and holding the staff. You could only see the silhouette. The staff was around, I would say let's say about 1.5 meters tall. And the being that was holding the staff held it by his middle, so that being must have been at least 3 meters tall, holding the staff, and it would glitch in and out of reality. And and you could feel the vibration. It felt like the shockwaves of energy that with every time you see it glitching in and out of reality, you could feel this as the energy waves would be released from the staff. And then a bit later, we were also watching the staff now with great attention, because what the heck is going on? Our minds are broken at that stage. Like, where did this even come from? Then we saw this dragon on the staff. It was a very thin dragon, pitch black. It had very thin legs and the wings. It almost looked like it haven't had anything to eat for a couple of weeks. It really looked thin, but it was this beautiful black dragon just sitting. We had this lovely psytrance music playing, and it literally looked like the dragon was dancing on the music, and it was just minding its own business. So that was the most profound experience ever, to be able to witness a dragon at that close proximity. Very, very small dragon, but still a dragon, And then the third time I saw a dragon was when me and my wife was alone on a full moon. We decided that we want to experience a dragon, and we just smoked a little bit of weed and said, you know what, let's just set our attention, see what happens. Started staring at the fire, and within about half an hour we started to see a dragon manifesting out of the fire. And that was even more special to know that without a lot of medicine we could go in much deeper. We didn't need that big permission slip anymore. We could just attune ourselves to that vibration, set the intention and go in, because we knew that because we create our reality, we can go into that space and experience beautiful things. So psychedelics can be absolutely amazing, but it can also be super traumatic if we don't know what we can experience. I know with my experiences going into spaces that I've never knew even existed, I would always joke and say that when I was religious, I had many questions, many unanswered questions that nobody could answer. And when I started using psychedelics and embarked on this journey of expansion, suddenly all those questions was answered, and I had 1,000 more questions, but not one of those questions was a question that I needed answering right away. I knew that the questions I have now is nice to know questions. It's not something that really is this burning desire of what I truly need to become. So through this journey of expansion with psychedelics, I knew that as I journey into myself, I would learn everything that I want to know about myself. I went to great depths to use this medicine as a catalyst to get to know who I truly am. Before I started on that journey, I had no idea who I was. I was lucky to be one of those people to be okay without a shaman. Something I highly recommend if you ever want to use any substance, any psychedelic, is to have a proper shaman. You're just taking your body and saying, you know what, let's go have a psychedelic experience, and you take a bunch of whatever you want to take, can be very, very irresponsible. I was always lucky to survive, in a sense. My reality always shifted that I would come back in one piece, even though I was traumatized some of the times by my experiences. I always had that blessing of coming back and being able to integrate what happened. But not having a shaman around was definitely the biggest training I ever could go through, experiencing psychedelics and not actually knowing at that time what it was for and how to utilize it in the proper manner. When we have this mindset of needing to be fixed or needing the medicine to do the work, we always have this intention that you should do the work, and we cannot truly surrender. When I finally came to this realization that when I fully surrender into the experience, I will have ultimate power and control. And that counts for all of life. You know, I believe that in this life, in this experience, we are but an observer. And the more we surrender to this experience, the more we have that control, or what we would call control over this experience. And that can be quite tough, you know, especially coming from a religious background, to step into that space of knowing that I can just surrender because everything is exactly the way it's supposed to be. I don't have to be this human doing all the time. I can literally just become a human being again. I remember I was never satisfied. I never felt complete. I never felt that I can just relax. I always had to keep up this dogma. I always had to keep up all the rules, because if you fail, you're going to go to hell and it's going to be the end of your journey. You know, you're going to be doomed forever. So you stay in this fear-based reality where you have no choice but to follow the rules, to obey, but then you have this desires in your inside of breaking free, but you're too afraid, and then it just creates this weird twists and tangles inside of you, and ultimately dis-ease. And when I started on this journey of expansion, and the psychedelics helped me to set myself free, it's a beautiful thing to look back and to know that I placed myself in a reality filled with all these beautiful medicines, or if you want to call it psychedelics or whatever you prefer calling them, to experience expansion. You know, everybody has such a unique journey of expansion. Everybody experiences their journey in such a unique way to find that expansion, to find that part of themselves they locked in their heart to be discovered. I remember long ago somebody told me that all the answers we seek is in our heart, buried deep in the corner where we never going to look. And I thought to myself, how the hell am I supposed to get to that place in my heart to find that hidden chambers where all the magic and the power resides, where all the beauty is? And when I started on this journey of expansion, I soon realized, but that was the key. My key was taking psychedelics and going on this insane journey of breaking through the barriers of consciousness, showing the collective out there that there is a better way, being the front runner, being somebody that goes and have the extreme experiences so that the next person can have it easy, so that I can just impart in them. When I do a session, I can just show them. They don't have to go through it anymore. With every single session I did with people, whether I was serving medicine or just doing energy work, I was able to use what I learned through my psychedelic experiences and show them the way, the shortcuts. Some of us are here to truly be the front runners and to pave the way for all other beings. I know most of you are on here tonight are part of that tribe, who are the leaders that's coming to show the new way, to bring back that Christ consciousness. I also had a very interesting experience about the whole Christ consciousness thing when I realized it the first time in my life. It was the very first festival that I ever went to. Back then it was still it was still super strange to go to a festival. We still didn't understand the whole psytrance and people running around half naked and being on every single kind of psychedelic you can imagine all at once. And so it was still a crazy experience, but we were just hiding in this beautiful pyramid that they set up with crystals and like-minded people, and we had this funny guy that was smoking his hubbly the whole day long, telling stories, and it was just this beautiful heart connection. We were always microdosing, just feeling the vibration. And one of the evenings I decided to take Molly for the first time, and I had no idea what the effect is gonna be. I don't remember if I even did my homework. I just heard from somebody that it's freaking amazing, and I said, yeah, well, I'm at a festival, let's try this out. And when it started to kick in, I didn't really know what to expect, but I suddenly experienced this burst of knowledge and information streaming in. I was like, holy crap, this is overwhelming, and I went to hide in the tent with my wife. And then suddenly I realized, but I am Christ. And at first I thought, but am I Jesus reincarnate? That can't be, because if I'm supposed to be Jesus that reincarnated, why am I such a silly little human being without any power? And I thought myself, no. Felt the energy and all the codes still coming through, and then I realized, oh, this is what's going on. It's the Christ consciousness that Jesus spoke about, that we all embody and have the ability to embody. And for the very first time in my life, I realized what it felt like to embody the Christ consciousness. And then a bit later that evening, we went out to the pyramid again. They had a big bonfire, and there was this beautiful soul sitting there with his staff. I can't remember what he called himself. He was one of the angels, and he looked at me, and I was still super into the medicine at that time, at that moment, trying to make sense of everything that I just experienced. And he looked at me, he's like, Jesus, is that you? Like, what are you talking about? Just after realizing that the Christ consciousness is in me, here comes this guy and tells me that I am Jesus and he's my angel. And it was this weird encounter of like, okay, buddy, I don't know what you used. It feels a little like you have smoked the wrong thing, but I'm not Jesus. Yes, I understand I have the Christ consciousness in me, and if you feel that you're an angel, good for you. Excuse me. So that was quite a funny experience to, for the first time in my life, experience what it is to embody the Christ consciousness and then have somebody immediately recognize that within me. And after that, it was much easier to embody that love, Then everything started to make so much more sense, to know that, what, yes, Christ consciousness is a real thing, and some of us are here to help bring that Christ consciousness vibration to the earth. It also reminds me of that Atlas. I know in Christianity they would say Atlas was the guy who lifted God's presence from the earth and brought in all sin, but it was probably just another way of saying that he came to bring in a different vibration, a different timeline, a different reality, probably at the start of a new age. The same with all the other leaders that we had, all the ascended masters. That's the word I'm looking for. When a ascended master comes, it's usually at the dawn of an age, but in this age we are all our own ascended masters. That is something that can be quite a mindfuck if we come from a religious background and we think about what it is to truly be our own savior, not placing that power into to an external being or substance or event, but putting that power truly back into our own heart. The funny thing is, in the Christian Bible, it will talk about the kingdom of heaven is within. And then you still have to externalize your power and give it away and say, I am just a little worm, I am worthless, and I can't do anything without the Christ within me and through me. I'm just a vessel and He's the power and He's everything and I'm just this empty vessel. Shame. Difficult to live by that standard, but when we realize that sentence that said the kingdom of heaven is within me, all the power that source used to create this reality is within me as well, then we realize, but oh my gosh, that is actually so simple. That is the key. All of creation is within me. When we start exploring the world of psychedelics, we always have this perception that we are going outside of ourselves. I remember the very first experience I had, I was lying on the ground, the medicine was kicking in super hard, and I felt the weirdest and strangest I ever felt before in my life. And I thought to myself, yeah, now I can imagine to be afraid to try psychedelics because it can be super scary. But when you do that with a proper shaman, somebody that is trained and truly embodies the frequency of the medicine, then fear becomes a great companion. How I did it when I was still using a lot of psychedelics, when I wanted to do a journey and I became afraid, I didn't do it. I knew that I shouldn't. And then one morning I would wake up and be like, today is the day. I would wake up, I would tell my wife, okay, we're gonna go out, we're gonna have an experience. Or the next day, and I would go out and have the most magical experience, because then everything is alignment. And interestingly enough, most of the times when I did it in that spontaneous manner, when it felt like the right time, it was usually a full moon or some kind of portal. I wasn't as aware of things like the Lionsgate portal that's open now and the solstices. There were still so many things that I was expanding through. Yeah, you can come through. Soon I'll be in the UK, then I will start with my cacao ceremonies again, taking people through the chakras, experiencing the lighter side of psychedelics, because you don't always need to take a big substance. That is one of the big things. A lot of people think or believe you have to take this hero's dose. There's a reason why they call it a hero's dose, because it is for the freaking brave or the real cuckoo like myself. It really takes either a really brave person or somebody that just resonates with it as well, but it's not always necessary to take copious amounts of medicine to expand into your heart, because if you already have that allowance, why do you need to punish yourself with something big? And this is why I focus on my cacao ceremonies. I just did a cacao session for my brother a couple of days ago, and we went super deep. I took a micro dose, like a 10 gram, which is usually just a casual dose that you take for the same way you drink coffee. A 10 gram is like that, but being so sensitive, I took a 10 gram and he took the full ceremonial dose. And being the being who he is, he didn't experience any of the physical effects that you feel on cacao, but he did experience the inner effects of it, and I felt all the external effects of both of our medicine, which is usually how it goes. It was quite amazing. But we went in super deep. I had this experience a couple of months ago. It was actually a threefold experience. The first experience was me and my brother going out, and I did a big psilocybin journey for him. He took like 20 grams, but the universe and his being rejected it. After about 20 minutes, he gave it back to Mother Earth. And I took about a 1 gram. While I was on that 1 gram, now we were lying around on the hammock, just having a casual chat. And while he was lying on the hammock, he saw himself in this council telling them that I am ready. And he didn't realize, and he didn't know what I'm ready for. He didn't share that with me because it was such a strange experience. And then about 2 weeks later, me and my sister took somebody else out for a journey to work on his chakras and to see if we can help him align a couple of things, shift some belief systems. And we took a microdose, well, not a microdose, a full dose of a medicine that was supposed to be completely blunt. I took this same medicine a week before, prior to that, and it did nothing. I didn't feel it. So we said, let's just take it. And in that experience, we went the deepest I've ever gone, ever in my life, with any kind of psychedelic experience, where I was in the circle between this council. We went into a completely different realm, and I went through a initiation, which was super intense. And then now the other day on the cacao, we were in session, and then we went back to that space, and I saw my brother being the center councilman in his full higher being. I remember I could see he was this old being. I could even see the wrinkles on his face. Yeah, he was this big grey being with his cape, sitting on this big chair, and all the 11 other councilmen was sitting around him, and I was sitting right next to him in my full being that I am, while I'm looking back at my human self in that moment in time, having that experience, having that initiation. So it was this amazing to and fro experience of having that experience in the past and having that experience right now all at once. And that was just on cacao, just a microdose of cacao. So, do you need to use a big dose of something? Not necessarily. Sometimes a microdose is all you need, because at the end of the day, what is it you want to experience, you know? Do you want to experience the vastness of space? Do you want to experience your own heart? What is your allowance towards yourself? You know, my wife, for instance, she doesn't need to take anything. If I take something, she rides that same wave, and we can go in as far as we want to. So the big question we have to ask ourselves is, what is it we truly want to experience? Do we want to experience extraterrestrial beings, spaceships? Do we want to go back to source itself? And are we ready to know what it feels like to be everything? Because I can tell you, when I went back to source, it's not what you would think it is. You would think going back to the source of all, it's going to be this super wow experience, like, oh my gosh, I was source and it was the greatest experience of my life. Now I understand everything. No. When we go back to source, we realize that it's pure discipline. Because now you know everything, now you are in control of everything. You understand, you understand, you overstand. You see in all dimensions. There's nothing new, everything is right here, right now. And when I was in that space, I was like, oh my gosh, this is boring. Let me come back to life again. Let me come back into my human experience. And I fractaled until I was right back in my body again. So happy to forget, so happy to be disconnected. That was one of the spaces I learned that being here on Earth is taking a break. It's source having a holiday. Think about it. If you are in a space of being everything, of knowing everything, of being in constant creation, nothing can surprise you. It's kind of neutral. Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah. So when you're in that 0 point, you're literally in that 0 point. Yeah. A different kind of breather. Life is literally a breather. Because between the breaths of creation, between the breaths of source, that inhale and exhale, life happens. In that silence between breaths, life happens. So when we think about psychedelics, going on a big ayahuasca retreat or taking iboga or whatever tickles your fancy, it doesn't always have to be something extreme to go all the way in, especially when you're on this journey of mastering your chakras, listening to your systems of consciousness. Then you're already in a space of allowance. Then you don't need to take these huge amounts of psychedelics to experience beautiful things. Yes, I experienced immense magic while using big doses of psychedelics, but my physical body was made to handle it physically. It took a huge toll on my body as well. It's, these things there's an energy exchange. It comes with a cost in a sense, even if that cost is just expansion, because we also decide that, it's a thing of perspective. If we truly believe that the cost is going to be health or sanity, then absolutely. But it takes a huge amount of energy physically to go into that high vibrations. Even though we call this a light body. I love the Afrikaans word of what we call the body, the physical body. It literally translates to light body, which is so beautiful, because when we start getting to the space of understanding that our body is just a reflection, it's pure light, then we know whatever we do to it, it's going to attune to that frequency. It's super reactive. So when you put a medicine, a psychedelic inside your body is going to embody that frequency, and it's going to become the frequency of that medicine, and you're going to experience reality in that frequency, in that bandwidth. The same with breath work. If you do breath work, you're also going to go into the space of the breath you put into your body. If you do energy work, your body is going to react and embody the energy that you put into your body. That's why they say thoughts are so powerful, because the thoughts are what you put in your body. So whatever thought you're putting in your body, that becomes your reality. That is what your body attunes to. So when it comes to psychedelics, we have to know that it doesn't have to be something big. It can be something as simple as cacao. At the moment, there's quite an explosion of popularity surrounding cacao and the cacao ceremonies, and everybody has their own very unique perspective on it. Some people almost create a whole new religion surrounding cacao, which is definitely not needed. You don't have to create a whole religion surrounding cacao. It can be just a beautiful catalyst. And what I love about cacao as well is it's completely legal. So you don't have that energy of, oh my gosh, I have to do it scallampies, I have to do it behind the curtains. I have to find a dealer in the dark corner to get it. I can just go to a shop and buy it, or I can order it online and I have this beautiful medicine, and you can ask ChatGPT for a recipe, or some of the places even sends you a recipe, a general recipe of how to prepare it. And it doesn't have negative side effects. It can make you tired, absolutely, if you use it in a ceremonial sense, and it's super healthy, where some, especially the chemicals, is very acidic and definitely is detrimenting to your health. Something like Mother Aya is a medicine, but the difference there is Mother Aya is such a big medicine when you go to a true shaman, because the shaman is the true medicine. And the only reason why Mother Aya is the mother of all medicine is because the shaman that grows up with ayahuasca are the true medicine. The medicine they supply is 10% of it. The songs they sing, the Icaros, the space they hold, the intentions they set, the preparation, the diet, or the dieta as they call it, that is the true medicine. The little bit of DMT that you digest with all the other herbs and spices or whatever it is they give you, that is almost a secondary part of the medicine. The biggest medicine is that shaman. And that comes back to what I said in the beginning, where people will hammer on the 3 S's of psychedelic experiences: set, setting, and substance. But actually the biggest thing people tend to leave out is the first, and the biggest S is the shaman. You can have a placebo medicine, but if you have a proper shaman, it will still be a proper medicine. That's something that I've experienced in my journey of expansion. When I started doing sessions and I realized, but I am the ultimate medicine, then my sessions went to a whole new level, because I knew in that moment I embody my shaman self and I am the medicine. You know, then you realize, but what we talked about, the Christ consciousness, being source, being all of it, then that comes to play. Then you come to the realization that the medicine is just a small permission slip. It's not even a big permission slip, it's a very small permission slip. And if you allow yourself to use a different permission slip, you can drink a cup of coffee and you can go as deep. You can eat a pizza, you can go sit on the grass and ground yourself next to a tree, and that'll be medicine enough. So medicine doesn't need to be a psychedelic, it doesn't need to be a mind-altering substance, because anything can alter your mind. Some of my fondest memories about mind-altering experience is with 0 psychedelics, where we would sit as a group of high resonant people together and just start talking about whatever. And while we're talking about whatever we talk about, the frequency would climb up. It would just go higher and higher, and we would just go deeper and deeper. And after a couple of hours, you would be so high vibrational that you feel like you're mid psychedelic experience, but you're 100% sober, because you allowed yourself to raise your vibration to a space where you embody that frequency and that vibration, which is the ultimate medicine. So when you consider using a psychedelic, you have to stop for a moment and think for yourself, what is my end goal? What is it I truly want to experience through this medicine? I have told a lot of people that wanted to come for sessions that, no, I'm not going to do a session for you. I'm not going to give you this or that medicine, because that's not what you're seeking. If you want to get high, go buy something somewhere and get high and do it at your home. But if you truly want expansion, if you truly want to face yourself, you have to be ready to face yourself as you are. And yes, having a catalyst or having a permission slip helps. When I work with systems of consciousness, I have seen that when you give them something like cacao, something simple as cacao, you will have these systems become curious, and they'll be like, oh my gosh, something's happening to the body. The the body's resistance is declining or decreasing, so now we can actually speak up. I literally saw this one day when I was working with a client, because I was contemplating whether to serve medicine or to stop serving medicine and just go in through breathwork and meditation. And I was working with the systems of consciousness, and I was talking to them, and I saw how they told me that when the body is high, they can take charge, because then that amygdala, that frontal cortex, is shut down. All the creative parts are active, and the systems can actually voice their concern. They can actually say, hey, I'm here. And sometimes that's a great thing, you know, being in that space of allowance, knowing that when I struggle to expand, when we have all these conscious thoughts that's hindering us, taking a psychedelic or taking something like cacao in a proper session, it can definitely help to open you to be more allowant, because it's all about that allowance, that inner allowance, to be able to expand into your heart, to be able to see where we have that ultimate resistance and work with that resistance. And I have found that in those sessions I make a lot of progress, because the client trusts. That's a big thing. You cannot work with somebody that you don't trust. You have to have that ultimate trust between you between you and your facilitator. And when you have that trust, you almost don't need anything else. You don't actually need anything else, but it's nice to use something like cacao as a permission slip to go in and to do some work. It's the same thing that happens in quantum sessions or any other session that people do, is when you go into that space of absolute trust, then you can open yourself to any space. You can go into inner child, you can go into any space you want to go in, because you have ultimate allowance. So I hope this makes sense. I hope this helps a bit. So when it comes to psychedelic trauma, it is something that people do experience. You know, I experienced that trauma, and it took me a couple of years to work through it. The big mistake that I made was trying to do it all alone. Thank you. So we cannot do it alone. Think about it in this way. If we came to do it alone, we would have been the only person on the planet. Simple. Because we are source, because we want to have every kind of experience. If we wanted to do it alone, we would have came alone. But we decided to be here with 8 billion other parts of self to help us, to assist us, to guide us, to encourage us. So the easiest way is to allow people to assist, to have that trust, to have that allowance for people to surprise you. Yes, a lot of times we go through life learning that people cannot be trusted. But when you truly think about it, it's not a distrust in others. It's a distrust in something inside of yourself. I think back to when I was very young. The reason why I was shy, it wasn't because I didn't trust other people, it was because I didn't have that trust in myself. I didn't trust I could do it. It's the same with my spiritual gifts, with what I'm doing at the moment. The only reason I'm able to work with the chakras and with cacao the way I do is because I have that trust in myself. And the more I trust myself, the greater my power. And that counts for everybody. The more we trust in ourselves, the greater our power becomes. And that's the only secret, is that trust in ourselves. And sometimes it's much easier when another aspect of ourselves, another mirror reflection comes to remind us, say, hey buddy, I just want to remind you, trust in yourself. It's something not even psychedelics could actually teach me. It showed me what I believed about myself. It showed me how I viewed my reality. But I needed to trust myself on my own. I needed to come to a place where I realized, when I put my trust in myself, things will change. I remember with one of the sessions I did a couple of years ago, I would sit with my client and I was busy light language and doing all kinds of interesting things, and suddenly it hit me and I couldn't help myself. I shouted like, oh my gosh, I got it. I finally understand how I'm supposed to do this. And then everything changed, because I realized that trust, it's just about having fun, coming back to that playfulness. Earlier I spoke about one of my journeys where I went into this ultimate space of joy, embodying laughter, and I was just laughing and telling my wife that the ultimate secret of life is just to laugh. And that was it, since that time I started playing with everything that I do. If I don't have fun, I ask myself, what am I doing? Why am I doing this? If I'm not having fun, I should take a step back and see how I can start having fun with this. That's definitely a big thing I learned through the journey of psychedelics, to get into this space of truly having fun, truly enjoying myself, and that created a reality that I can enjoy, creating that space, that container, that allowance for enjoyment. I remember so clearly I had this one experience at a festival where every single person on the dance floor was in this super high vibration. I again took some psychedelics, not too much, because I knew if I take too much it's gonna be a super intense experience. So I just took a little bit to tap into the frequency, and it felt like our bodies took over. It didn't feel like I was in control of my body. It felt like my body went into a state of pure enjoyment and energy. And everybody was like this one wave of connection, moving, ebbing and flowing. And I was looking at everybody around me, and in that moment I knew that everybody knew exactly what was going on, that we are in this perfect state of enjoyment, but nobody's gonna remember this when the music stops. And I became sad. I was like, oh my gosh, I want to remember this. And I asked myself, please universe, can I remember this? And I remember my source said, yes, of course, why not? You asked, so why not? You can remember it. And that changed so much for me, to know that it's that pure enjoyment. When we play, when we do anything through that space of pure enjoyment, life changes, time starts standing still. Everything comes back to this one single point in our life where when we enjoy it, it's just amazing. So guys, I hope you enjoyed my talk. I am at a place to go to bed. I had a long day, but it was fun to share my story. It was great to see you guys. Thank you for supporting me. Thank you for joining on my live. Remember to, if you have any more questions, throw me a personal message. We can talk about it. I'm definitely going to speak a lot more about my experiences, and I hope you guys have a fantastic day. Guys, take care, and see you on the flip side. Cheers guys.